Okay, picking up where we left off on page 104, we're talking about reporting and having regularly scheduled meetings. As an alternative to doing a lot of meetings, there's lots of things you can do. You can just do, Skype kind of a thing, video teleconference kind of things. You could have a project management system that requires them to do something electronically, so you could just kind of look at the schedule and see what's going on and not have to have an awful lot of meetings. I'm not saying that you should avoid all meetings, not by any stretch of the imagination, because you need to be talking across. These are humans you're dealing with. You need to be talking across the room and see their eyeballs when they're talking that, yeah, we're going to meet the deadline. So yes, it's important. However, when you're putting together these project status reports, they're typically for the outside. And so the project status report, they can be verbal, but most of the time they're going to be a written report. And most of the time they're going to have lots of pretty pictures, so to keep the corporate people happy. So Gantt charts are very often used to show the status, graphically. And then hopefully, handling potential problems can be difficult, And they give you some cautions here. And the caution is, if you're doing a Chicken Little kind of a scenario, if you're raising your hand, every week saying, oh, no, we got a problem with the schedule, and it turns out that, it was just a minor issue and you were easily worked through it. If you pop your hand up a lot, they're going to start to kind of discount you, and whenever you do have a real problem, then I'm mixing metaphors. Instead of having Chicken Little, you're going to have the boy who cried wolf. So mixed metaphors. Okay, and the opposite, of course, is true where something horrible has happened to the schedule, and you decide to kind of keep it quiet or downplay and say, well, yeah, we're having a little problems with the scheduling of the crane, but that's not really an issue, and I think we got it under control. And then you end up sending your construction crew home for a week. Corporate's going to be highly pissed because if you had involved them, they might have been able to put some additional pressure on the company providing the crane, for example. Anyway, so the point of the story is don't overreact and don't underreact. So you have a kind of a relationship with management on how to do these projects, and so the project reporting is how that's done. Okay. So on page 105, they give you some examples of these PERT charts and these Gantt charts. I'm going to show you Microsoft Project. Now, you don't have to use Microsoft Project. There's some free software. There's a cool one they talk about in the book that you can download that does some excellent jobs. I'm familiar with Microsoft Project, so I'm kind of using it here. By the way, before I get into Microsoft Project, most people, if you just give them Microsoft Word, here's Microsoft Word, most people can figure it out, right? It's not that big of a deal. Excel, yeah, they can figure that out. PowerPoint, if you're just going to play with it a while, you can kind of figure out how that works. Well, let me tell you, Microsoft Project isn't quite that way. If you just dump this on somebody, they are going to struggle. I mean, big time. This is not an easy program to master. Now, don't get me wrong, it ain't that difficult. But I'm just saying, if you just expect to be able to do it without looking at a book, like I never looked at the Word documentation. I never even got documentation for Microsoft Word. I just jumped in and started typing, and I figured it out as I went along. Not here. I needed a book to figure this thing out. Okay, so this is an example. It's just a sample file for some project that I found on the internet. And they talk about individual tasks. And if you can see here that this particular task has some dependencies. It only lasts one day. But so when you assign these team members, then these other tasks can occur, which is kind of cool. Now watch what happens if I try to grab this guy and move him a little bit. I'm going to move him over a couple of days. It's going to say, whoa. Now, wait a minute. You're moving this thing away from this launch team. Did you want me to adjust the task? Do you want me to move the task? And so what I tell people when working with this is don't do it graphically. If you're trying to tweak something, just go in here to the dates. Now, you can get this little edge. See, when you hold on to the middle, But if I can grab just the edge, then I can say, okay, that's going to take a little bit longer. It's going to take 2 weeks to do. Doink. That's pretty cool. Notice how they have Friday and Saturday marked. You can load the calendar in here. So, for example, if 4th of July is in here, you could show that as not a work day. So when you drag these things in, say, 2 weeks, it actually figures out how many work days are in there. Pretty cool. Anyway, what I tell people is, because this is fraught with problems, I tell them, don't change the dates graphically. Go here and do it. So you bring up a calendar and you pick something, and that's the safer way to change these dates, because it's a little bit more complex than it appears. You also have this way you can fold things together. Like this entire thing is a phase. So phase 1, this planning phase. And so they basically summarized it. Isn't that pretty cool? Where I can see details or not see details by just clicking on something. And the second phase, and here's one of those little diamonds I was mentioning, where the planning is complete. It's an event. So once the planning is complete, then we can start the initial launch phase, or whatever the heck this project is about. So I mentioned before about how you can have these events. So that's a specific event, and on the same day as the event that the planning is complete, we're picking this guy up. So this entire process is dependent upon that one. That makes sense, right? So here's some more. Here's one that's a little bit more complex, where this one is dependent on that one and that one, but it's also dependent on this one, which is dependent on that one. So yes, you get some spaghetti in here. So this task, I cannot start this one until both this one and this one are complete. Cool. Anyway, I encourage you, if you can go to the university and get copies of these software packages and take a peek at them. Microsoft Project is used a lot. I will tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. If you're going to do this, I also recommend you go get a book. Maybe like the Dummies series, something that's going to give you a clear path on how to proceed, because let me tell you, you can get lost in the weeds big time with this software package. I'm not trying to make disparaging remarks about Microsoft Project, but yeah, I taught a class in just Microsoft Project, and I would tell them, okay, now here's how you think you would do it, but you do it this way instead. And here's how you think. And after about the third or fourth time, I said that, the folks in the class were saying, "Well, why don't we just make it easier?" It's like, I don't know. Okay, so project management software such as Microsoft Project, I kind of like it. I use it. There's an awful lot of companies I know uses it, and we pass these project files back and forth. They tweak them and send them back. Those kind of things. They make excellent charts. They have a really cool way you can put this on a plotter. Oh yeah. You can also go in and say, well, I don't particularly want to look at a Gantt chart. I want to look at the PERT chart view, and you can do all sorts of interesting things. Instead of saying I want a Gantt, I can go in there and say, I want to track usage. It's just a cool thing, and you can assign resources. For example, this task, you could put people's names against this. So this particular resource has actually people against it. Bob is going to work on this, and Jill is going to work on that. And so when you look at it from a resource usage point of view, you can actually see whether or not these guys have been overbooked. You can see, oops, I got this guy working too many hours. I don't want to do overtime here. So there's, in addition to resources being just people, you can throw in things like conference rooms or cranes or something. You can actually go in, and these people, the cool part about that is these people can go in and add they can go in and add their availability. They can go in and say, I'm going to be on leave next Tuesday, and so if there's a separate product called Project Server, and where the people can go in and tweak their availability. And so, they go, hey, I'm going to be on leave next week, and boom, boom. things change and you go, whoa, I need to go grab Robin here to help out Sharon because Sharon's going to be on leave. Very powerful tools. If you're a manager, if you plan to do this for a living and really be a systems analyst, having a mastery of Microsoft Project is a very cool feather to have in your hat and something you should be able to be proud of on a resume. Okay, but continuing on our cool little lecture. So we talked about the Gantt chart, network diagram, calendar view. That's a cool one here where you can go in and actually see everything all lined up on a calendar. In fact, you could print the calendar view. It's pretty cool. Okay, I'll skip through some of that. Let's skip on over to page 111. So on page 111, they talk about risk management. And the risk management we're talking about is, we're not talking like safety. We're talking about risk management associated with the project. And right off the bat, let's just define what that term means, because some people kind of go crazy. They think risk management means risk elimination. And no, it's not risk elimination. It's risk management. I want to manage the risk to an acceptable value. Okay, so reading their little goofy definition, it says a review of the project scope, the stakeholders, the budget, the schedule, and other internal and external factors that might affect the project. Define project roles and responsibilities, risk management methods and procedures, categories of risk, and contingency plans. Yeah, you kind of sort of need to know where you're going to get people, or what are you going to do as a substitute for a crane, using that goofy example I've been using before. So there are steps associated with risk management. The first step being identifying the risks. Crane fails or crane doesn't show up. So list each risk and assess the likelihood that it would occur. Okay, I'll admit you're kind of sort of guessing here on the likelihood. You don't have to be very specific. And then analyze the risk. And it's typically a two-step process when you're analyzing risk. It's the qualitative risk analysis, which evaluates each risk by determining the probability that it will occur, and then a quantitative analysis on how bad that's going to be. So it's how likely and how disastrous, those combinations. And so they have this little cool diagram that shows the risk probability. So you might say this has a very low risk and its impact is relatively low. So it's sort of like, nah, who cares? But on the other hand, way over here, you've determined that the impact to the project is devastating and the probability is very high. Wow, you better have a contingency plan ready on that, because it's likely to happen, and if it does happen, it's going to be disastrous. So, and you don't have to have units. There's no unit of measure here for the risk impact and the risk probability. I mean, you don't have to go to the math and say, the probability of 1 out of 10. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about just you as a manager looking at what you think the risk probability is. And the only real unit of measure is, that a 4 is twice as likely to happen as a 2. That's all. It's a relative scale to allow you to put these kind of things in context. That's all. Okay. So on page 112, they continue on and talk about risk management software. Yes, there's software out there that will help you put this stuff together. And it assigns specific dates as constraints, aligns task dependencies, notes the external factors that might affect a task, project tasks, displays the tasks that are behind, link the risk and responsibility of tasks, specifies the probability and what the impact would be, assigns ownership, that's a good one, and tracks the progress to manage the project more efficiently. Well, we've reached the 15-minute mark, so I'll see you again in just a few.